Mama, welcome to the Mrs. Mummy PhD podcast. I am your host, Dr. Michelle Gibbs, and this podcast exists to help scholarly mamas like you to achieve your life and academic goals without sacrificing what matters most. Here, we're changing the overwhelm, juggle, struggle narrative around what it means to be a mama on an academic journey to one of empowerment, fulfillment, and purposeful success. So how do we successfully navigate these journeys? Well, first, we need the space to embrace this unique blend. Let's begin by saying yes to creating a life that feels as good on the inside as it looks on the outside, because that's when we truly become purposefully whole. So get ready for the most non-traditional, unconventional, and revolutionary approach to PhD motherhood, because one thing I have learned over my many years of experience on this journey is that if you want something different, you have to do something different. But you must be brave enough to think differently first. So, Mama, are you in? Fabulous! Let's begin. These are our journeys of becoming. Hey Mama, welcome back to the podcast. Thank you as always for being here and for tuning in. We've got a special episode for you today. It's a guest episode, and it's really for those mamas listening to this who may wonder sometimes, like, what is it really like to juggle a PhD, career, motherhood, and still finish that PhD well? Like, that's what we're going to be talking about today. I've got a special guest. I'm going to be sitting down with Dr. Milensu, who is a PhD holder in infectious disease epidemiology, and she now works as a lead medical statistician. And she completed her doctorate while she was juggling work, motherhood, and a global pandemic. Dr. Shainde shares how grit, education, and purpose really helped her to rise against the odds. You've got to hear her story. She opens up about her 7-year PhD journey, raising her daughters, working through a pandemic, and what life looks like right now in her post-PhD era, where she's leading clinical research and breaking barriers in UK academia as a lead medical statistician. She talks about her inspirations, her struggles, and what she felt was missing from her journey through the 7 years of her PhD. And I think this is a really important conversation to have, because obviously, yes, we talk about people who have finished their PhDs and left academia, but we haven't really had the voice of people who have finished their PhD and actually want to stay in academia. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today, because that's what Milensu has done. And we're going to be talking about her journey, both through and post PhD. It's a real conversation. We get deep, real, and honest. And it's the kind of story that you don't want to miss. If you're navigating a PhD journey as a mama and juggling all the things, and this is an episode you do not want to miss. We're going to be talking about what it really means and what it really takes to pursue a PhD and raise our families as working mums and still come out thriving. So if you ever needed a reminder that your journey matters, your dreams are valid, and this can be your reality as well, then this episode is for you. And so without further ado, I'm going to stop talking and we're going to tune into the episode. Let's tune in. Milensu, thank you so much for being on the show. It is such a delight to have you and for you to come on here and hopefully share some wisdom with our amazing Scholarly Mama listeners. And so before we even get into the thick of it, why don't you start off by letting us know a little bit about yourself and how you arrived at where you are today?
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks for having me. I've been really excited, actually. Can't wait to speak to you. So I was born in Zambia. So if you don't know Zambia, it's right in the south. So think of South Africa right at the bottom. But I left at the age of 7 and moved to Botswana, where my mom worked as a teacher, but my dad was in England pursuing his PhD at the time. And then we joined him when I was about 10 years old. So I kind of did most of my primary and a little bit of the secondary education in the UK, and then went back to Zambia, finished the secondary school, and then I returned back to the UK where I did most of my education. So undergraduate and postgraduate studies. And then after postgraduate studies, I now work as a lead statistician. So in research, that's my role at the moment. So this is where I am with a mom and two girls, married.
Amazing. I love that. I'm so fascinated by your journey from Zambia to building a life together with your husband and completing your PhD in the UK while raising your two daughters. So, talk to me about what a typical day looks like during your doctoral studies and how did you juggle all those hats?
No, that's a very good question. Like prior to the kids, doing a PhD was like a 9 to 5, to be honest. And, time was, I say unlimited because, I could procrastinate. So just a relatively simple schedule to follow. But then we had our first daughter um, during my PhD. But at that time that she came, that's when my PhD funding also ran out. So I kind of needed to return to work.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, return to work part-time. So it really changed a lot. So which means that then during my PhD, I worked part-time. So spent my weekend doing the PhD, which meant my husband was doing all the full-time parenting during the weekends. And then that went on. Obviously, I had an extension due to maternity leaves. And then we had our second one, which arrived during the pandemic. And when she had arrived, actually, I was about a year away from submitting the PhD. But we kind of then agreed with my husband that we really needed to like finish this thing. So the typical day then really meant that I was waking up 4 a.m. in the morning because I knew that I only just had like a couple of hours in the day to work on the PhD. And then also like in the evenings when the kids went to bed and the weekends, I also had to sacrifice the weekends as well. So, had an opportunity to work on them while my husband looked after the kids really. So it was just juggling the PhD and working at the same time.
I could imagine that was really difficult and I can relate to so much of that.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I can relate to so much of that. And it, honestly, like I couldn't have done that without my husband and without him holding things down, especially when I had like major deadlines and I was really pushing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have been able to do it without him because, and I give so much, credit to people who are navigating this journey, who are not in relationships, who are doing this as single parents. Like it is so admirable. I can't imagine the strength that takes to be able to do that. But no, I definitely hear you there. And you mentioned that your PhD journey, you obviously, it was an extended period. It was around 7 years, I think you said.
Yeah.
And 7 years is quite a long time for a PhD journey. I can relate to that as well. 8 years and counting over here. But were there moments when you thought that, maybe I'll just put this thing on hold for now? Like, did you ever have those thoughts?
Yeah, like all the time. I think it was actually like in two stages actually, because when I had started it, even before the kids and getting married, I actually did have moments of quitting. And the reason for that is because I was like, oh my gosh, can I do this? Imposter syndrome, because it's a very big jump from like maybe say doing a master's, like a PhD. Masters are very structured, you've got your coursework and things like that. And then, the PhD is just more like, oh no, you've got time, you can, do whatever you want. And it's like, oh my goodness. So I found myself, I found that I started to learn who I was. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm a, procrastinator here. Like, oh gosh, I need to be told what to do. And it was more like, oh, and then it was hard. Actually, the PhD, I found it really hard. Hard, I think, in so many different fronts. So I kind of felt like an imposter syndrome. So that was my kind of first initial, like, oh, I need to quit this thing. And then I found it isolating as well. So there were kind of so many things going on. But then obviously it became harder than with the kids, isn't it? Because then now the second time I'm like, oh God, I really can't do this thing with the kids. And, the mom guilt, I was just like, what is this thing? And to kind of describe the mom guilt the way it was like kind of like this constant dark cloud over me that just never left, So if I'm not doing the PhD, I'm with the kids, but then I'm thinking about the PhD and then vice versa. And it was just like, I really can't do this. And I think, honestly, when I said the PhD, I didn't, life happens, you don't really think these things will happen, but, you have to also just allow for life to happen because I think you learn more about yourself. But certainly numerous times I felt like quitting.
Yeah.
because it was a lot. But I struggled again with the act of quitting because that's not in my nature.
Mm.
But it was really hard.
Yeah, no, I definitely hear that. And, thinking about the difference in terms of like time and how precious that becomes. I'm reading a book at the moment called Five Types of Wealth. And in that book, I don't know if you've read it, but in that book, he talks about how as young people, he talks about different types of wealth. And one of those things is time freedom, right? One of the types of wealth is time. And he talks about how when you're young, like you are like a time billionaire. Like you've got so much time. He's talking about how Warren Buffett is probably about in his 90s now and has so much money. But if somebody said, would you rather have all the money you have or would you rather trade that for the time? He'll probably trade it for time. So time becomes such a precious commodity almost.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
and when
Yeah.
you're young and you have so much time, you can't imagine. Like I remember times during, earlier degrees that I did where I felt like I could just spend days on things, like months on things, like
Yes.
you just had these long blocks of
Yes.
time
Yes.
to work on
Yes.
stuff.
Yes.
And then when you
Yes. Yes.
become a mom on a PhD journey and you think, oh, and
Yeah.
you've got
Yeah.
work as well, it's like, oh my goodness, I
Yes.
have
Yes.
zero time. And
Exactly.
like, how
Exactly.
do I manage to, to get through this period of time where it just feels like there's not enough hours in the day
Yeah.
to get everything
Yeah. Yeah.
done. And I can understand that in under that amount of pressure and under those circumstances, it's very easy and very tempting to say, you know what, I don't want to be bothered with this PhD. Like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
could be just
Yeah.
enjoying my life doing loads of other stuff.
Yeah.
I don't want to be
Yeah.
bothered. I want to just quit.
Yeah.
And again, quitting
Yeah.
is a realistic, valid option for some people under
Yeah.
certain
Yeah.
circumstances. We're not shaming people
Yeah.
who've quit their
Yeah.
PhDs,
Yeah.
but you could understand how so many of us as scholarly mamas will have that thought of,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
want to quit this PhD. So
Yeah. Yeah.
what kept you going when things, especially during those tough times when you were juggling the family and the PhD and work and everything, what actually kept you going?
Yeah. 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 What kept me going? Oh, that's a good question. I think just for answer that, I think the point about the quitting, um, I think that one is you have to be like okay with it. Like it takes time. It's not going to be like overnight, I think, because there's so many reflections that are undergoing, like, oh, what's the impact? And I remember like somebody said, okay, if you quit your PhD, just write down how your life you think will look like a year from now. And then how do you think it will look like 10 years from now? And actually, when I wrote that down, in a way, I was like, oh, okay. So she said, write it if you don't quit, and then write it if you quit and see how it looks like. And I was like, wow, it really kind of then helped saying, okay, no, just keep going, you're almost there. Um, and then the bit about the time as well that you had mentioned, where like, oh, you don't have enough time. Again, I think that also takes time. And over time, when you start the PhD, you just start to think, okay, you know what, I can't be fighting with this thing constantly. I just have to learn to live with it, and learn to be more accepting. Like,
Yeah.
okay, it's okay if you just have 2 hours. That's okay. You don't need to feel guilty. Like, I remember early on, I used to say with the kids, I was like, oh God, if I just had 8 hours to sit down and just do this thing, I used to say that for so long. And then
Yeah.
eventually it's like, well, you just have 2 hours. So just make it work. And that was like, okay, I just need to accept that. The bit about like, yeah, what kept me going. Um, I'd say the biggest influence was my dad, who's sadly no longer with us. So lost him during my PhD, which again was another kind of turning moment,
Yeah.
because he really was, my kind of anchor, the one that kind of kept me,
Mm.
going, because he did a PhD as well. So we could, kind of like understand each other. So I would say that he was definitely like the biggest influence of like, okay, just keep going. It's okay. And then I'd say my daughters as well, actually, because I thought, okay, I want to be the, like the role model. So not to essentially let them down and teach them that, although it may be hard, but it's not impossible. I think that's just what it was. Like, it's okay. It's not impossible. Other people have, been and gone and done it. And there's a reason why you wanted to do, this PhD, and it's okay. And it's like those internal battles I constantly had, isn't it? Like, the quitting, seeing it as a failure. But that narrative, as I said, like changed during the PhD, because you start to find out that it's who you're becoming along the way. So yeah.
I love that. And, one of the things as well, like, as you mentioned there about imagining your life, if you get to the end of this PhD, what that could look like, or if you'd quit your PhD, what that could look like. I think one of the other things for me is also this thought around the fact that the time is going to pass anyway. And so it's about, how do I want to reflect on this time? But also in two ways. Like when I think about that, I think about that in two ways. One is that, yes, the time is going to pass anyway. So I might as well pursue my dreams and my goals. And, when I reflect, I can say, yeah, I actually did that. But also, I think in terms of what you said earlier about accepting that this journey is going to look different, I think is really a key point, because accepting that actually my life is still happening in the background of this PhD. So this PhD, I can't allow it to consume every moment of my time, every moment of my thought processes and my thinking and my mental space. Because if I allow that, then these precious years with my kids and this precious time that, we're becoming poorer and poorer in terms of time as we get, as we go along, then I'm losing out. I'm losing out on so much. So I think it's like, thinking about the fact that, yes, time is going to pass. So pursue the dream by all means, like pursue the goal, do the thing, but make sure that you're doing that in a way that doesn't leave you with regrets at the end of it. Doesn't mean that you look back on that time and think, oh my goodness, I wish I'd, seen the kids grow up because I spent all that time focusing on my PhD. So I think it really does go like both ways. And I remember you saying that when the pandemic hit, everything kind of like went a bit upside down for all of us, to be fair, for all of us.
That is true.
How did your kitchen table suddenly become both a research space and a homeschool classroom?
Yeah. I mean, it's more like, do I just by default just, make decisions that just, work against me? The pandemic was an interesting time, actually, because of my work and I'm in research. So we were also involved in, high profile studies that were essentially looking for, treatment for COVID-19. So that side of work was, extremely intense, just because of the nature of things.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I was pregnant, as I said, with my second, and I thought, okay, I've got say 3 months or something, before 3-4 months before she's due. So, let me just kind of finish this thing up. But of course, the universe had its own plans. So then she came early. So then that, then kind of added to the mix as well, which then meant that, again, everything just had to stop basically, like, kind of during that time. So while all that was happening, I think you just literally learn to just kind of keep going as best as you can. So really, I would say that what kind of surprised me during that time was just the resilience that we just had to keep going. We just had to keep going. It was kind of like the only way, really, to be honest. But at the same time, it was also then, okay, being there for like my first daughter as well. And at that point, she was still like at preschool age at least. So it's not like it was school age.
Yeah.
So that maybe helped a few things. But yeah, it was a very difficult time.
Very difficult time. Oh my goodness. It was such a blur. And being pregnant during that time was a scary thing too.
Yeah.
I was pregnant during that time as well. That was pretty scary.
Yeah. I think like when you, look back and like reflect, you're just like, oh wow, okay, like, what exactly happened? And I think for so long, it literally was like a blurred moment, like, oh my, as if like you've just been hit by something. And then it's only years later, you're like, wow, what actually happened there? You know? We're like looking back, I'm like, oh my goodness. I think we all went into survival mode without even knowing.
Absolutely. And now when I think about life, like, and I think most people think like this is like pre-COVID and then post-COVID is like a divide in everybody's life history of like what life was like before and what life is like after, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
You know what? I hear from so many scholarly mamas, academic mums about feeling like they're never fully present. Like there's a real struggle to be fully present, thinking about their kids during academic work, which you mentioned as well. And also thinking about the research during family time. I know you mentioned you did experience this, but how did you make peace with that?
Yeah. And just talking to you now, it's even making me think, because I think when we kind of start PhDs, whether you have kids or not at that stage, I think when you kind of start, we really like put weight on it. Like, oh my God, I'm doing this PhD. Like, it's such a big thing. And yes, it is like a big thing. And because that's all kind of like starting point along the way, along the journey, it then starts to become really challenging. Like, okay, this thing is clearly starting to shrink, because then there are other kind of things going on in my life as well. And my husband and I kind of saw this, when you just think that, okay, this guest has overstayed their welcome. Like,
Yeah.
they need to, how long is this guest for? Like, they need to go soon. And I think it was, for me, definitely like acceptance. That's what kind of got me through it. Like, just accept that, okay, it is there, it is what it is. And I think it's that accepting that, it is part of the family, it is going to be part of, like, your lives and stuff like that. But then the piece is that, okay, don't worry, one day it will go. At some point it will go. I had this PhD buddy with me that I'll definitely encourage. I'm like, please just have a PhD buddy, somebody who's just there to say, don't worry, like, just keep going. It'll get done. It will get done, and just kind of hearing those words, like, it's okay, don't worry, it will get done. Sometimes that's what you just need to hear. Like, okay, even if it's just one line I've written today, that's okay. It will get done.
Yeah.
7, 10 years, whatever, it's fine. It's all right. So it's just acceptance.
Yeah. No, I love that idea of reminding yourself that there is a finish line, there is an end point.
Yeah.
And so often when you're in it, and I remember feeling like this, like when I was in my PhD journey, I struggle to see the finish line. I struggle to like imagine being done.
Yeah.
So having somebody in my ear whispering to me, it will get done, would have been so lovely to kind of help me to visualize what that could look like, and to actually see myself, not having a PhD in my life. Like, I couldn't picture it, because it was in my life for such a long time.
Yes.
Like you said, overstayed its welcome.
Yes, it really did. And I think I remember my husband, yes, he was supportive, but then at some point he'll be like, oh, okay, what are you going to be done with this thing? And then of course you're like, oh, okay, you don't really understand. So what did you do today? Not much. I'm like, you don't understand.
Yeah.
Like, oh my goodness.
Totally get that. Totally get that.
We need to hurry up. There's too many people in this relationship. So
I love that. So you've got a internal family joke, right? Which I'm going to share. Your family like to joke about you loving graduation, which is hilarious. How have your cultural roots and like family influences, how has that influenced your approach to juggling motherhood and academia?
Yeah, so definitely it's like, just what I grew up with. And I bring it back to like my parents as well, because they were both teachers. So, just kind of being raised by teachers, then it's just really ingrained in us the importance of education. So my father was, we're like 3 girls. And so for him, it was like, right, you have to like, pick subjects. And because he was a teacher here as well, so I guess he had that insight, where he thought, okay, I'm bringing up 3 Black girls, in this like, Western world. What things can I advise them and, support them on, so that then they don't, kind of like struggle going forward. So literally he made us choose to do like STEM subjects, all of us.
Mm-hmm.
I think I remember I wanted to like be a lawyer or something. Maybe that was just like a dream career, but I wanted to be a lawyer. And he said, it's fine, you want to be a lawyer, but go ahead, do the STEM subjects first, so that, and then come back and be a lawyer. And his thing was like, I want you to pick subjects where they don't have a choice but to pick you. And I can see where he was, like coming from, because, I guess now I'm like, in the world of research, and, you can actually see that it is about, the intellectualness that, I'm bringing to the role, not necessarily like, the color of my skin, for example. And I don't necessarily feel that. So kind of just having from that background and seeing where he's coming from, that's where the belief and kind of like, the what's the word I'm looking for? Just a way of like thinking in terms of like my philosophy, like, towards life is more like, okay, it's just that education, and just believing that it's education, it will kind of just get you where you need to be, being from an African background, and he came from a poor background, but he got to where he was through education. And this is why he then, ingrained it in us as well. But of course, times are different now, slightly anyway. Mm-hmm.
That's really interesting, actually. Do you feel like your childhood your upbringing gave you any, I mean, you talk about the perspective, really strong like value for education. Do you think there's
Mhm.
anything else about your upbringing, or maybe even what you saw your parents go through um, as they climbed the ladder themselves? Do you think that that
Mhm.
impacted how you saw your journey through education?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I think it's I go back to that like resilience because I was thinking about it, isn't it? Because I was like, okay, this resilience thing, it's such a big thing, but actually, it's not something to take for granted because not everybody is able to do that. Because when I reflect on, the 7 years of the PhD, actually, there's a lot that happened, in our lives, a lot to just be like, nah, like, I'm just done with this thing, you know what I mean? But actually, I kept going. Um, and, I kind of like, look back then, I guess maybe it's, from like little small things that I actually now I remember, I think maybe from the age of like 3 or 4 years old, we didn't really have a car or anything, but, would literally walk to school. And looking back now, I think maybe that walk was like, I don't know, 45 minutes to an hour or something,
Oh,
just walking,
wow.
like, no car or anything like that. So again, I'm like, okay, that's wow. Like, there you have to be, a little bit strong for you to just, keep going. Um, the leaving the country at such a young age, to go to a different country, blending in and things like that. But I guess more so even like the discipline, right?
Yeah.
The discipline, to sit down there and like, just literally study and, just kind of get you through that. And I was in boarding school actually for like a year as well, I think at some point. So again, I think it's just that strong, influence, like, okay, look, this is at least what you've got at this point in time. And, nobody will be able to like, take this thing away from you. Like, you work hard and, you'll be able to achieve what it is that you want. So I think it's, yeah, maybe those kind of upbringings, because I wouldn't say, we grew up wealthy. We didn't, but, we just had, the basics of what we needed, a loving home and things like that. And I think that's maybe the attitude that I guess got me through, actually.
I love that. I love that. So now that you are 3 years post PhD, working as a lead medical statistician, what's changed about your like day to day family rhythm, family routines? What's changed for you?
When you finish the the PhD, you like, you've done your viva, quote unquote, or you graduate and you're like, wow, okay. It's like, what do I do now? Like, all of a sudden it's like this vacuum. You've got all this space of time and you're like, oh my goodness. And I guess, during that time when doing the PhD and working, actually you don't realize, but actually we're high functioning at that
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
So I found that once I'd like finished, I was now like engaging in so many other things, like, reading books that I didn't have time to read because, reading out of pleasure, I was like, oh, no, I need to read my papers. I wasn't reading like out of pleasure during my PhD. Then I felt more control of like my weekends now, like, spending quality time and just guilt free. And that guilt free also like took time because like, no, you don't need to do your PhD now. Like, you can hang out like, with your family and stuff. And then now working also as a, in a leadership position, I think that's also another kind of worms, Michelle, because yeah, it's
Trust me, I
it is
know.
another kind of worms. It's another kind of worms, like, okay. Um, but the PhD has opened the doors for that kind of like, possibility. Because certainly after finish the PhD, career wise, like things have accelerated
Yeah.
really quickly,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah.
But now, it's more like, okay, what things, do I do with my time? But it's good. I feel more in control because, like, for example, I have a power hour in the morning, where like I wake up, early and, just like time to myself, whereas before it was waking up early, to like do the PhD and stuff. So that's definitely kind of saved me. And yeah, and also, now, the girls are now in primary school. So actually it's a good time because they need more support,
Yeah.
academically. At least I've got more time for them now. And in a way, it doesn't feel, that point you made about, feeling regret now. I think it's more like, okay, that was just another chapter. It's okay. Actually, now you're around for the kids and, do what you can for the kids now. So it's great. It's definitely great.
I love a few things that you said there. So one of the things that you said was around your career acceleration, like the career progression.
Mhm.
And I think it's one of the most like I think when you're in the PhD and you are just thinking like what on earth is the point of this? Like
Yeah.
I could
Yeah.
just not bother with this.
Yeah.
you don't see the benefits. And for
Yeah.
me, just like you, I've had that massive career acceleration as well. And I look back on that and I think I am so glad that I pushed through for two reasons. One goes back to your reflection there about resilience and how even from the simplest thing as like walking to school in Zambia, like walking to school for an hour, like that builds a lot of resilience, right? And that same resilience is what's allowing you to function in a leadership role now, and to be able to ride the waves of that. And also, sorry, my train of thought has just gone out the window. What was it? I was going to say something important. What was it? Oh my gosh. I'm going to leave this in. I'm not even going to edit this out. I'm sorry, listeners. I cannot remember what I was going to say.
Let's backtrack. Let's backtrack a little bit.
So I was going to say the resilience of,
yes.
Oh, yes. I remember now. The resilience that you obviously develop as a child and also through the PhD journey, but also the fact that the PhD itself, by completing that, it shows the world what you are actually capable of.
Yeah.
And so that career acceleration can happen more naturally because people perceive you as being a quick learner, somebody who can adapt quickly, somebody who can lead, somebody who can work independently, autonomously, somebody who has great creative ideas. And those are all the qualities, among others, that make good leaders. And so it allows that career progression on those two fronts. And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because quite often people, they don't want to talk about like money or anything like that. But the truth is that finishing your PhD can open so many doors for you. And that's something that should motivate us. That's something that we should be proud of once we've done it, because it can encourage somebody else who's on the journey right now thinking, oh my goodness, what's the point? Like, there is a point. You will hopefully be able to see the fruits of your labor. Not everybody has that experience, but from those of us who have, it has felt completely worth it.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think when you do start off a PhD, you don't start it off, in my case anyway, I wasn't like, oh, what skills am I going to gain from this? And I think, to be honest, my mindset when I'd started, it was more like, okay, I'm doing this for career progression because I know that it's going to give me this experience, like academically. But actually, when I came out of it and now actually being in a leadership position, I'm like, oh, wow, okay, no, you actually had also picked all these things up from the PhD without realizing.
Yeah.
And that's a very good point that you talk about in terms of money. So, being in academia it's a whole different ballgame. And I know there are different camps, in terms of, the experience in academia, sometimes it's a bit challenging, sometimes it's okay. But actually, I think what I'm learning is, yes, whatever environment you're in, you are learning more about yourself, but also maybe learning okay, what things then can I work around? So, in your previous podcast that I'd listened to, I felt so encouraged where it's more actually you can still, design, the type of life, that you want and stuff. And it's only through the experience where I'm actually, you can still, learn boundaries. Yes, I know, that will take time, but, just learn boundaries. Why do you need boundaries? Well, you're a mom, you've got kids and things and that's okay.
Yeah.
But all these things, Michelle, again, it's it's not overnight. It's through years of going through all these different experiences where you're just okay, hang on, imposter syndrome. Yes, it is there, but actually it's okay. You've earned where you're at. Look, you're in this position. They gave you the position because they know you're capable of it, just the other day I learned, and maybe you know this, I don't know, but I learned actually there is power in having doubt, but the narrative that I grew up is oh, if you're doubting, that means do you know your stuff, or are you sure you know what you're talking about? But it's actually no, it's good to have doubt as a leader, especially because then you want to test out why you're doubting it by trying to validate what you're thinking. But it's all these things where it's more it's an involvement. So changing the narrative, changing the beliefs and things like that. But you have to go through that process for things to actually start working and moving. And if you don't put yourself out, if you don't put yourself outside these comfort zones, you won't know.
Absolutely.
You actually won't know. So yeah, no, it's good.
And one of the things as well is that doing a PhD is, I talked about this on another episode. I don't think I've aired it yet. But I talked about this in another episode, how the journey of a PhD is like a journey to oneself. And I believe that the best leaders of other people are people who can lead themselves. And
Yeah.
if you can lead yourself well, if you can,
Yeah.
exercise that self-discipline, have curiosity, don't be like a know-it-all, like, really approach the leadership in your role with humility and, openness, and being able to understand where your faults are, where your limitations are, where your
Yes.
shortcomings
Yes.
are.
Yes.
All of
Yes.
that you experience and you learn during a PhD. And so by
Yes.
by navigating that journey and really getting to know yourself and really understanding who you are becoming on that journey, I think then it positions you so well to lead other people because you understand how to lead yourself. And I think
Yes.
that is one of the most, I guess, underrated benefits of doing a PhD, and one that really, really shapes you up so well for that career acceleration once you're finished.
Yeah. 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 No, I agree.
So for the mamas who are listening, who are staring at PhD applications or struggling through their doctoral studies right now, I know there are many of my listeners who may be in this position. What's one thing that you wish that someone had told you that would have made this journey a little bit easier for you?
A community, finding a community. Um, I mean, I don't know why I kind of didn't do that sooner, because I just thought, okay, I'm in this, let me just kind of get through it. Yes, I had my PhD colleagues, but not a lot of them had kids. So for me to
Yeah.
kind of like, understand. And I would say that just from the beginning, just try and find a community, because it will be lonely. It will be lonely. And then if you're doing a mom and you're doing a PhD, you kind of just want to share that struggle during those difficult times. And it's just sharing the struggle, not necessarily like, oh, I'm coming for advice, but just an outlet. And I think that's what it was. I did not have an outlet. I just had to deal with these things by myself. And I'd say just, yeah, it's important. And even if you can find like a mentor or something like that, then yeah, I'd certainly encourage that for sure.
Yeah, no, I agree. I completely agree. I think one of the biggest regrets that I had on my PhD journey as well was not having a community, not creating a community. And that's why I'm so passionate about doing that now, because I understand the value of that, and I understand how limiting the isolation is when
Yeah.
you don't have that, where you are like navigating this journey in isolation, feeling like nobody gets it. Your PhD colleagues don't get the mum life, and the family don't always get the PhD life, and you just feel like nobody, like you don't belong anywhere, like like nobody gets it. And so to have a community where people are like-minded, where people are navigating this journey or have navigated it, I can see so many benefits to that. And that's one of the inspirations behind Scholarly Mamas. But I was also going to say that, like a lot of people will talk about like purpose. And I'm a big fan of thinking about our purpose as we are in the throes of this PhD motherhood journey. And it can feel a little bit intangible. It can feel a little bit like, head up in the clouds kind of thing. But I really feel like it's important, because for me, purpose has three components. One is actually four components. One is intention. One is purposeful action. One is accountability. And the other is community. And when you mix those things together and you are on the right path, you're on the your own purpose path, like the sky is the limit, really. The sky is the limit. And that community element, even though sometimes it feels external to us, it feels like, I don't need anyone. This is my journey. I can just kind of keep it all to myself.
Right.
When you have that, you can, expand your capacity, because you're not carrying all of that mental load yourself. And so it frees up space for you to be able to take the intentional, purposeful actions that you need to take. And so by having that community, it's not just let's just hang out together. It's really a strategic tool that you can use to free up yourself, free up your space, so that when you're away from the community, once you've had your check-in and you've, gone back to real life,
Yeah.
you can get
Yeah.
on with
Yeah.
what you need to get on with.
Yeah. Yeah. I certainly agree with that, because also knowing that it's the internal battles that you're having to deal with, right? Because actually, I mean, I said community, but also you just said it like, community where you can relate, like cultural, things like that. Like, oh, can somebody just, kind of like, understand, like, what it means, the importance of like, no, I can't quit my PhD. And,
Yeah.
I feel like a failure, other people might be like, no, 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 come on, just quit. It's all right. And it's like, no, you don't understand what I'm dealing with, like
Yeah.
how heavy this, decision is, or, I feel like I'm not good enough, or, just saying that, yes, I found it hard to find a community, because again, there was that element of like, no, 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 I'm strong. I can deal with this. I can deal with this. But it's more like, no, 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 come on. Like, you're under stress. You're dealing with so much. You're juggling so much. You need help.
Yeah.
But again, it wasn't that free, because again, it's these beliefs, these narratives, that we've kind of grown up with, that we're having to override. And those things, like, take time. But I think if you are in this kind of group community, to just say, I hear you,
Yeah.
but it's okay. It's okay. Like, it's fine. Just that, literally, like, it's okay. Is so important. It's so important.
So true. So true. Love, love, love that. So, as a lead medical statistician collaborating on so many important research studies, and as you mentioned, obviously the COVID-19 work as well, how did you model this kind of work-life integration for the younger members of your team, especially those with families?
Mm. That's also like taken time as well. It's a work in progress. But certainly one of the things that I know trying to kind of model with the team is just understanding that, as working moms, academic moms, or working moms anyway, we don't, it's very difficult to fit into this 9 to 5 model structure. And actually, flexibility is like, we need it. It's like, a lifeline. And that's okay. So it's more like, okay, look, at the end of the day, it's just quality, just, try and do what you can, and just to be more understanding, and just having that trust relationship as well, just saying, okay, you will, the job will get done. And obviously if there's anything, let's discuss it, because I also live that life, So for an example, I'm leading a team, but actually it's hybrid, so I'm in the office, a couple of days a week, for an example, and then I'm working from home. I have to leave at a certain time. I don't have the luxury of working 9 to 5, and it's just my team trying to understand that, and even, setting those boundaries, like, yeah, I just don't have time, and it's accepting that as well, not feeling guilty,
Yeah.
and just having that culture as well. So it's so important.
So important. And I wanted to touch on your blog, because you also have a
Right.
blog,
I
and
do.
that focuses on navigating life after the PhD, which is, of course, a whole nother level,
It
right?
is.
So,
It
what's
is, yeah.
been the most unexpected challenge about maintaining your academic career momentum while being present for your kids in their growing years?
So what I'm finding is, yeah, we finish our PhD, and then it's like, it's then what,
Hmm.
we always ask, like, then what, so again, it's like, okay, do you stay in academia, do you leave academia? I don't know, whatever, journey you kind of decide, but it's just the then what. And then coupled with, being a mom, it's a whole added level of complexity, because whatever decision you make will involve the whole family. So, questions continue to arise. So even if it's post PhD, but it's more like, okay, do I take that promotion? Do I take that promotion? And again, it's all these things that, again, it's just having to navigate, where I'm like, okay, again, it's important to have a community, because again, would be like, okay, when I was being promoted as a lead statistician, it wasn't a straightforward yes in my head. Yes, I'm ambitious. I wanted it, but I was like, what's the implication of this? Okay,
Yeah.
what will happen? So I don't know, so many questions that we women ask ourselves, right? Men are just like, yeah, just go for it. Um, but I think it's certainly questioning, like, okay, which skills, do I need to make sure that I'm able to do effectively and like efficiently, which that's what the Work Academic Mom blog is all about, So just, again, trying to look within yourself, and trying to, you talked about the self-awareness, really, to be honest, it's still work in progress. So really just trying to learn more about, myself. Okay, who am I in this process, or after this PhD process that I've been, because I think you're still reflecting. It's not that once you finish it, you're like, oh, I know what that's about. I know who I am. It's only when you're being put in certain situations later, you're like, oh, okay, maybe I guess, that kind of helped me, because of the PhD. And, as an example, like, in the PhD, you learn to be or, say you're publishing a paper and the reviewers come back and it's rejected, the first instance is like, oh my God, I've been rejected. But, over time it teaches you like, no, that's actually good. Like it just means that, you need to do it better, or like, just try and improve on that. And actually, just go to another journal. I don't know, just so many, it just teaches you certain things. But then the academic career is also demanding as well. It is demanding in itself. But then I guess being in an academic setting, in my setting anyway, I do have some leverage to kind of say demand for some flexibility just in terms of how I can work around my, kids who are primary school age, because I know that they also need me to be there with them as well. And then just kind of relating that, I'm sure there are also other women in this position as well who are like, okay, I'm still in academia. What else am I, dealing with being in this environment? Because again, it provides me with that stability that I need at this point in time in my life. But yeah.
I love that. I love that. And for those who kind of who it kind of went through one ear and out the other, what was the name of the blog again? Can you share that again with us?
It's Work Academic Mom.
Lovely, lovely. So are you on social media as well? Can people follow you there?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram. So again, at Work Academic Mom, you find me there. So I mean, it's a blog that I kind of just started because it just helps me with the outlet and just, reflecting and just knowing more about myself and trying to meet like-minded people, I guess, also in the same field. So yeah, it's like a passion project that I've started.
I love that. I love that. And it has been such a pleasure having you on the podcast. We wanted to do this for a long time, and I'm so happy that we were able to make it happen. So Thank you so much, Milensu, for coming. I'll leave links in the show notes for everything. But thank you so much for being here.
No, you're welcome. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed talking to you, Michelle.
Thank you for tuning in to the Mrs. Mummy PhD podcast. I hope you've enjoyed the episode, and if you did and you want in on this movement, please head over to mrsmummyphd.com or scholarlymamas.com. If you want to do your PhD well without sacrificing yourself or those you love dearest, then you need your hands on all the ways that we can work together to transform your journey of scholarly motherhood from one of overwhelm, disillusionment and burnout to one of scholarly joy and purposeful success. Make sure you head over to mrsmummyphd.com. I'll leave a link in the show notes. I cannot wait to work with you. Remember, Mama, these are our journeys of becoming.